Welcome back to Welbeck Junction, and it's an exciting one. We're finally going to get some track down on the layout. So baseboards are in and fitted, inclines are in, risers are glued, and the far side there as we're looking is going to be where the fiddle yard is. It's going to sit lower than the rest of the layout and it will come up to baseboard height via the risers. So we're going to look here right to left. There's three boards, right hand side, left hand side and centre board, which are the ones that we focused on building in the last episode. Kicking off with cork, so 3mm cork sheets from SPD I think it was. I have marked them up so that I've got a nice line the length of the fiddle yard board rather, and I'm going to cut along with a pair of wallpaper scissors. Not the normal choice, admittedly, but I tend to find these give a really nice, clean, crisp cut on 3mm cork. I've tried various different knives and I never find I get as good a cut with a knife as I do with a pair of scissors. So cutting along the length of the piece of cork, I wanted to try and keep one piece per board. I think it's just be cleaner and look better. So working my way one end to the other, just making sure I keep as straight as possible and minimising any cutting I've got to do when I've finished the gluing of the cork to the board. So with it cut, next stage is to glue. So I use a neat PVA. You could use copied X. It would be a hell of a lot of copied X, but you could use copied X. You could also use a watered down PVA. I'm using a neat PVA. Two reasons. I don't want to have to come back to it because it is lifted at all due to adhesion. I'm not in any rush, so I can put a nice neat layer down quite thick, put it onto the baseboards and give it a good week, 2 weeks if I need to dry out fully. Going at it with a paintbrush, making sure that every single part of it has got PVA on, and then I've gone for sort of doubled up here and PVA'd the actual board as well. With it fully PVA'd, it is then a case of pulling over the cork sheet, trying not to get any PVA on the face side of it, the upward facing side, sliding it here into place. I am creating a bit of a mess this end. In hindsight, I probably should have put some paper down or some plastic down underneath, but hey, there we go. Pulling it into place. I did pull a slight piece out on the far end, but I can sort that out a little bit later on, and it's out of view, so I'm not too fussed about it, and it's not going to be impeding on where the tracks are coming in and out of the fiddle yard either, so not a problem. I think once you got it down, it's like anything, a bit like wallpaper, you're going to get some air bubbles underneath it, so it is a case of slowly rolling pin and just working your way around the board with said rolling pin, which obviously I hadn't just gone and got from the kitchen, getting all the air bubbles out and just working the cork into the baseboard, making sure there's a nice adhesion with the PVA. With it PVA'd and following this technique and letting it dry and giving it time to dry, that cork isn't going anywhere, and it's going to make a really nice base to lay the fiddle yard track onto. So with the first board done, it was then move on and work on the other boards. So here I'm working on the board that runs from the fiddle yard around towards the door, and it's the same process as before at this stage. So I'm giving the baseboard a really good coat of PVA, making sure I get into all the corners and it's a nice consistent coverage. I tried a slightly different approach on this one and didn't bother gluing the cork as well as the baseboard. Um, I prefer to do both, and I think I go back to doing both, but at this stage I was just quite happy to try doing cork no glue, baseboard glue, and putting some weight on it and just seeing what the outcome was like. Here, I'm gluing the cork again. This is my preferred method. Thought I'd try the other one, but yeah, I've gone back to what I know and what is proven. So gluing the cork and yeah, cracking on. Bit of a monotonous process, but there is something slightly therapeutic in just painting the cork and seeing the baseboards coming together. And here we are. Most of the baseboards, or certainly the fiddle yard element of the baseboards, glued and dry. Really pleased with the outcome. Is there any difference between gluing only the cork, only the board and not the cork, or gluing both? Not really, in all honesty. Now it's dry, so I'm really pleased with this. Nice, clean, crisp cork. And as you can see here, all the sections have gone in really well. So that's where I'm just working around the waste stack coming down the corner of the garage. So I've cut around that and created a mini board that bolts on the end of one of the normal boards. So the final job before really getting these into place and making sure they fit nice and snugly and looking at the track plan for the fiddle yard is to trim any excess cork that's overhanging the edge of the boards. This will help them butt up together nice and tight. It will give them a nice straight finish both on the ends and on the front and back face. But also it will make sure that when I fit the track over the baseboard joins, I can get a nice clean cut in the track. So if these boards have ever got to come apart, it's a really clean, crisp process, and then marrying them back up together, again, is really easy to do. And now we're finally on to some track planning, track laying fun. So this is my plan coming from the left hand side of the fiddle yard. We have a curve point into two curve points and then going on from there. Now, curved points are renowned for throwing off rolling stock and locos. However, the new Unifrog curved Pico point is a different animal. So I'm going with those. I've done a bit of testing. They seem to be really reliable. So I will be utilising those curved Electrofrog points with some medium and short turnouts to get me from one track into 13 tracks to run the length of the fiddle yard. That's my plan. So I have stenciled around and come up with this. And as if by magic, here is the template with some track laid over it. So you can see the curved points, and then you can see the ladder system coming off of those into 13 different tracks. A few small bits of track I need to cut to get it to work exactly, but I think this will work, and some testing I have been doing sort of reassures me that that's the case. The Arda track at the bottom is where I am considering putting my programming track. Quite how that's going to work at the moment, I'm not quite sure, so I'll come back to that. Moving on with a bit of progress, I've been doing quite a lot of testing with sort of the basic ladder down, and you can see the bottom left hand side of frame there, that's actually coming off the bottom of the incline. So that point is running off the bottom of a 3-degree incline onto a flat. Now I've had no issues with it running like this. It's controversial, maybe, but it's not causing me an issue, and the point is firing okay when I've tested it. So yeah, really pleased at the moment. The initial testing has worked really well, so now it's just more testing and more tweaking to get it exactly how I want it. Now with all the tools and rubbish moved, you can see the inlet to the left hand side of the fiddle yard there playing with the idea of how I'm going to curve round into the closest track to the viewing side of the layout. Do I go for a curved turnout in that space? And that's the area there where I was saying I'm thinking about having the programming track. Would I like it to be a pointed programming track so the train could run into it and then isolate it and program it? Maybe. But I'm going to be honest, for the amount it's used, it's probably just as easy to have a standalone programming track in that space. So working across, that's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 lines, and I can't squeeze any more in. I think this is the optimum. The work I did either end of the fiddle yard with templates was purely to try and make sure I could get in as many as I could and have the longest run, so I could run the longest trains that I could. There you can see the inlet to the fiddle yard coming off of off of the bottom of the incline, and that is working really well. Where the red dropper is where the point motor will be firing from. Well, yeah, I'm really pleased at the moment. I think it's looking good and seems to be working well in test. A quick aerial view of track laid and some testing in motion. And here we are looking at a full set of fiddle yard lines laid from the left hand side up to the midboard, and here you can see I've laid over the join, and where they're actually fitted and pinned I've removed a few sleepers which will allow me to then Dremel the gap, and the idea is then that I can slide a fish plate onto one or other of the tracks and then slide the fish plates across to make sure they're aligned dead straight. So here we go, working our way through the point system all the way back to the point that's actually laid on the gradient, and yeah, through testing these Unifrog points have actually worked really well. Really pleased with them. I've not had any derailment issues whatsoever, so yeah, shout out to Pico, they seem to work really well even with temperamental stuff. But yeah, really pleased, and really pleased about how much storage it looks like I'm going to get from these lines, and potentially where I'm going to put the programming track. Potentially, haven't fully made my mind up yet. Some wagons, some Freightliner, container wagons, FEAs, testing the points with a couple of Seacows as well. And there you can see the burgundy strip is where I've finally decided to put the programming track. So it's going to be an independent programming track in that space. Nearly up to the third board, but on the third board, drum roll, is the reversed template that I used on the left hand side, flipped over in place on the right hand side, so the right hand side will mimic the left hand side exactly in terms of points used, apart from they'll be the other way round, and layout running into the fiddle yard. So time to crack on with the points this side. Before I move on, just a quick close-up of the programming track, which I've highlighted in burgundy. And here we go. So power base laid all the way down to the start of the right-hand inlet to the fiddle yard, and with the first right-hand point placed and just made sure it functions correctly. Again, it was a loose fit of the points working their way into the fiddle yard, so I could calculate and work out again any gremlins or issues that might occur coming in this way. Although it is mirrored, I still like to do a dry run just to make sure everything is correct. You can see there the curved or left-hand curved points going in, which really make up the backbone of the start of the fiddle yard, allowing me to come in and get around a much acuter angle in a lot shorter space than using the standard sort of left-hand turnouts in either short or medium form. There is a medium left-hand turnout going in there because I've got the space to do it, and that throws the line up to the 12th and 13th line. Working down towards the front, putting in some short ones down the laddered section. Really pleased with how this is played out so far, but proof of the pudding will be when I'm running some proper trains across it. Now I don't want to collide with structural supports underneath when I come to lay point motors, so these green frog lines are where the cross braces are on the baseboard, so when I'm laying the points I can make sure I avoid all of the cross braces to save me any reworking at a later date. Track tacked coming in from the right hand side and working its way across to the pre-laid left hand side. So I'm just laying a yard at a time, working my way methodically down and across the fiddle yard. Starting to come together. Working through the ladder down towards the front edge of the fiddle yard, just making sure that tolerances and angles and fish plates are all joined and all droppers are going in as effectively as I can get them in. Lots of progress. So we're coming off of the right hand side and most of the ladder is now in place, and I'll come back to what I'm doing at the very front in a minute, but we now are joined up. The back three tracks are joined to the left hand side, making sure that they're laser straight as I am laying them. A combination of a metal rule and a track setter tool is helping me do that. You can see here that I'm across the gap using the same method as before, removing a few of the sleepers so that I can cut it at a later date and install some fish plates. Bending round well and looking down the full length of the fiddle yard, it's looking pretty big. Really pleased with the amount of space I'm going to get. Soon won't be able to see it when it's covered up, but for the moment you can. The frog tape, what I do is as I work down and across, I'll just cut it, lift it off and whip it away. When it comes to laying track and putting droppers through, I do have a process. So cut the track to size, make sure it's aligned, make sure you've got the right gaps for expansion and contraction in place. And then I try and work out where my most optimum point for droppers are. What I've tried to do along the rest of the fiddle yard is drop the droppers through in roughly the same place, because it just makes wiring them a lot easier. When I know where I want them, it's a matter of getting a Sharpie, working out where the last ones have dropped, and then popping a Sharpie mark through the sleepers on the inside edge of the track and just dropping a dot onto the cork. What that'll then allow me to do is snip out some of the webbing between the sleepers on the track and then solder into place the droppers with the dropper insulated cable to the inside of the railhead. That way it can disappear down through the baseboard without being seen. So my Sharpie marks are on the board. Drill with a small 3mm drill bit, I think it is, straight through. Because the cork was laid onto PVA and it's had proper curing time, and another benefit of not using Copydex is it's not going to grab at the drill bit as it goes through. So there we go, 4 dropper holes straight through and really clean. So having soldered the droppers onto the piece of track, it's a case of feeding the dropper wires through the cork. So I use black to the back, so there's the black one going through on the back. Always worth just double checking where your hole placement is before you actually stick the drill through. by this point in time, I drilled more holes than I can remember for droppers, so it was sort of second nature. But if you want to keep it really clean and really tidy, just take a moment to check that your droppers are going through somewhere where they're easy to get to underneath, and also look tidy from the top. So 4 droppers fed through nice and easy, and then can be pulled through underneath. And of course, where I'm feeding them through here, I've got a baseboard join as well. So one set of power will go to this near side and the other set to the far side, and then just hoovering up any dust and sawdust underneath as I go along, just to make the end cleaning job a lot easier. So when it's clean, droppers through, it's a case of just feeding the droppers down, or sliding them down in this case as they're going straight through as I'm dropping the track in, and then placing the track where it needs to go, ready to be fitted with its fish plates. Now fish plates are fitted on this end, so on the far end here what I'm doing with the set tweezers and needle nose pliers is just working the fish plates back onto the far end section of rail, and just making sure that they're all nice and snug and tucked away, ready for when I actually cut through that end. This end they're already joined, but the far end they're on and slid back onto the railhead so that I can cleanly cut through with the Dremel and then feed the fish plate back over the gaps. Here I am just feeding them forward on this end, just making sure that they're across the join and nice and solid. Now, short of tacking it down, that is a piece of track wired and fish plated in. So zooming in now so you can have a little look, that's where the droppers are, and they're hardly even noticeable, the black ones especially. The red ones show up a little bit more, but really pleased with that. Really clean and tidy job. Why I decided to film this in portrait rather than landscape, I've no idea, so I'll apologise about that now. But when it comes to pre-drilling holes for point motors, again, the process I use, and it's by no means the only way of doing it, is start off by marking with a Sharpie where I want the droppers to go power-wise. So obviously I've got the frog dropper, and then I've got the black and red droppers for the bus as well. So I've marked them with a Sharpie, and I come in with a technical pencil with the lead at quite a long distance, work out where I want the point. I then centre the point blades so they're right in the middle, and then just go in with a pencil and just make a mark through where the point motor spindle goes. It's quite hard to see on cork, so you have to sort of keep your eye on where it is. But once you've made it and you're happy with it, it's like when I did earlier. I go underneath, drill the hole, and then feed the droppers through again where I have pre-drilled those holes as well, one for the frog there. I think it's worth taking a little bit of time, especially when you do the first couple on any layout or any baseboard, just to make sure you're happy with the process. Again, I prefer in this instance using PVA because the holes that go through the cork are a lot cleaner when you're backing it with PVA than you are with copied X. I tend to find with copied X, because it's got that sort of rubberized texture to it, when it's dry it will pull at the cork, and you can end up with sort of a rather rough edged hole, where with the PVA, because it goes hard in this instance, you end up with a nice clean cut. And there you go, point motor, fish plates in and point motor into place, bar pinning it down. So on the right end of the fiddle yard at the front, where on the opposite side I've got the programming track, I've got some space and I want to try and utilise some of it. So I'm thinking about having a couple of tracks running in for either just locos or short trains, maybe even the track cleaner. How I'm going to get in there, I'm not sure. So all the other track is laid. The final point is in there on the ladder that you can see at the moment. If I go with a short radius left-hand turnout, the angle between the left-hand turnout and the existing point on the ladder is too acute. You're going to throw everything. It's just not physically possible to get around there. And there I am with a set track, short set track bend, just working out. So that is not going to be an option. That gap is just too tight to be able to get round. So it's back to the drawing board. However, there might be another option. The other option comes in the form of one of the curved Pico turnouts like I've been using elsewhere on the layout. So this one admittedly is a right hand, but just to prove the point, if I flip it over and then place it, the natural curve on the inner side of that point as it is will line up with the existing point. It will take a little bit of adjusting, a little bit of tweaking, a little bit of butchery, to put it nicely. And look at that, as if by magic, there's one I did earlier. So what I've done is got a curved turnout, a unifrog again, and I have placed it and then marked it and cut it so that it will actually sit and align with the existing point network, enabling me to get round that tricky curve. So I've took probably an inch and a bit off of it, and then wired it with its frog cable and with its two droppers. So yeah, in testing it worked okay. So I think what I've done there is managed to squeeze a siding and a point into a space that probably wasn't destined to have one. So I'm really pleased with that. And there it is in situ and wired. So the top exit of the point there, as you're looking at it, sorry about the camera work, is the one that was cut and shortened, and you can just about see where the gap is in the sleepers where it joined the existing one. And there it is feeding through to two extra tracks running into that dead space in the fiddle yard. Yes, I probably could have squeezed a couple more in, but by doing that I would have shortened the length of the tracks. So looking back down there, really pleased with that. And the tape is on, aligning where I need to cut with the Dremel to actually separate the fiddle yard boards. So the next job will be making a cut in these, remembering that I've already got fish plates on the track here so that I can line them up and then join them. The culmination of a few weekends' work means the 13-lane fiddle yard is done. There's a Freightliner at the back there with Freightliner 66. I think it might be 10, it could be 12 FEAs in it, and there's loads of space either end. So fiddle yard is in, all lines down, all laser straight, and I am really pleased. So thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe, and the project moves on now, hopefully at pace.